We are here today talking with Papa Dia, founder and executive director of the African Leadership Group, an advocacy organization dedicated to improving the quality of life for African immigrants and members of the diaspora. Through social, economic, and educational empowerment programs, ALG helps families successfully integrate into their local community. A native of Senegal, Papa immigrated to Denver in 1998. He used his first job stocking books to teach himself how to read, write, and speak English. Beginning with an entry-level position in a local bank, over the next 17 years, Papa ultimately climbed the ranks to become a regional vice president. In 2017, Papa left his banking career to focus his full attention on running and growing ALG. Fast forward to 2020, it's been a year that has been full of challenges, difficulties, and a lot of pain and sadness from COVID-19. Let's take a few minutes and talk about ALG and how the coronavirus has impacted your programs and how you are moving forward with them during these challenging times.
So thank you, B, for having me. It's truly an honor to be with you and your followers. And as you mentioned, as the founder of the African Leadership Group, we started this organization based on the need of African immigrants to be fully integrated into the American society. And we do that with three areas that we focus on. Social impact. Why social impact? Because as an immigrant, if you come to a country where you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, you need to have somebody that really help you to be socially adapted to this country. And that's one area that we focus on. Economic impact. Economic impact, why? Because that's one of the main reasons most of us left Africa to come here to seek economic opportunity, to support ourselves and support the family that we left behind. And educational impact, because we believe that everything in life goes through education. And now, being in a new environment with a new education system that we don't understand, we felt like it was very important also to have a platform to help community members understand the education system. So all our programs are tied to the three layers. And for the last 3 years, we have had a lot of success doing it, where we are helping kids, we are helping members of the community find jobs, we are helping them buy home, start their business. So we had had a lot of success doing this program for the last, last few years, until now. We are facing with this pandemic where things need to change, and we are heavily impacted, and we are living into a new world and new norm, and we are all trying to adapt. But just to give you a background, that's how we were doing those work now until this new environment that we are all facing now.
Well, knowing you, Papa Dia, you have not missed a beat. It's not a surprise. But as you know, this segment is called Urban Splendor, which focuses on people and organizations who are doing great things in the community. And in spite of you continuing your many programs, share with us how you are supporting the community during this epidemic.
Yes, and if you follow the organization, I can tell you that, for example, I started the organization for the first 13 years without funding, but we will still figure out a way to do the work we do and have the impact that we need to have in the community. I am sharing this to let you know we are an organization where when things need to be done, we are not looking for excuse not to get it done. We always find ways and resources to get it done. And when we were all faced with this challenge, we did not want to be the one that sit on the sideline and complain. We still wanted to be part of the solution. So when we realized that we all needed to transition to the virtual world, we just roll up the sleeve and dive into it and do it. We took all our programs that we were having in person, the public speaking class, the youth program, the town hall meeting, we all transitioned where we are having it virtually. It was not an easy process, knowing that most of our family, they do not have computer. Most of them do not know how to manipulate computer. Most of them do not understand the virtual world, including WebEx and Zoom. So what we've done is, first and foremost, we raise money and get computers that we were able to distribute and get it to the community, and where we train members of the community how to have this basic skill set to be able to log in Zoom and WebEx, so that way they're not left behind. Especially knowing that the education system for the kids was really resuming into a virtual world, it was extremely important for the parents also to have access to the computer, to have access to internet, but also to have the basic skill set to navigate the system where they can participate in those platforms.
I understand also that you're providing resources in the communities as far as food and other things that the community needs. Tell me a little bit about that, and how are you reaching them, and who are you reaching, and what are you providing in that aspect for the homes on a personal level?
Yes, and that's a very good question. When we were all hit by this pandemic, where a lot of community members lost their job, and they were not in a position to put food in the table, they were not in a position to pay the mortgage, where they did not even know how to apply for the PPP. So we were just impacted in so many different ways. And now, being the organization we are, and culturally we know our people are so proud in a sense where they will not come and say, hey, I am starving and feed me. So what we've done is we partner with the city of Denver and other organizations where we are delivering meals 4 times a week, meaning like every week we are delivering about 1,500 meals. And we do that on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And we have a group of volunteers that come, and we just go to these families that we know that they need it. We just go, knock on the door, leave it by the door, and using social distancing and wearing masks, but just making sure that everybody that's in need of having access to food, they do have access to food, because those are the basic needs. So that's one thing that we've done, and we continue to do until now. And it's just so impactful. The community is very thankful and appreciative to having access to such a thing. We are working with another organization also where all the undocumented immigrants, because when you have a need, it doesn't matter if you are documented or you are undocumented. We know that the United States government really gave funding to people that lost their job, to the people that are documented, which is great. But we have an undocumented community that we serve, but they still have those needs. But we are working with another organization where we're going to be able to give financial support to every undocumented immigrant that were impacted one way or another by COVID-19.
Wow, that is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I want to just take a moment and thank Papa Dia for joining us today, who definitely has a big urban spirit with all the things that he's doing in the community, for the community. So if you want more information about the African Leadership Group, I'm going to let him tell you how to go to his website or call an email.
Yes, thank you, B. And we look forward to partner and collaborate with everyone out there. If you're looking for more information, you can go to usalg.org, usalg.org, or you can email us at info@usalg.org. We are part of the community. We are present in the community. You go to our website, you can sign up to get our newsletter. You can see all the activities that we are having. So be also, you already have that Spectrum spirit, and you've been doing it for many years. We are very fortunate to have you in the community for all the great things you are doing and serving as a mentor to as many people, including me. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and we look forward for long-lasting partnership and collaboration.
Thank you, Papa Dia. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you in the community.
I have a black son.
I have a black son.
I have black sons.
I have a black son.
I have 2 black sons.
I have a black son.
I have black sons.
I have a black grandson.
And we can't breathe.
African Americans have played a central role across the musical landscape in the United States. This month, we acknowledge our vast achievements and contributions to the world's musical scene. June is Black Music Month. And in tandem with that, we have invited a group of phenomenal local entertainers to discuss some of the issues that impact their industry. And so I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panelists today. We have Ms. Sandra Watts. We also have Ron Ivory. We have Ms. Catherine Ross. We also have Mr. Frank Schultz, Mr. RHETT. And finally, we have SCHULTZ. And SCHULTZ is a recording artist based in Denver whose musical career is on the rise and touching the world. Her latest album, Wide Nose, Full Lips, is an unapologetic love letter to Blackness. You can see more of SCHULTZ in our Urban Splendor segment later in this broadcast. So how has COVID-19 affected your area of business in the entertainment arena?
By the COVID crisis, it impacted me tremendously. Personally, I had to close my business. I couldn't afford to sustain a gathering space through the mandated shutdowns. And so unfortunately, business came to a complete stop at Live at Jack's and Jazz at Jack's. So I had to unfortunately close the venue. As well, the live music performances throughout the city that I'm involved in, the municipal cultural events, festival bookings, talent management, and 90% stop. People are out of work. Musicians are hurting right now. And live music, as you have probably heard from everybody on the panel, has come to a complete unfortunate stop. People are getting creative. They are doing virtual concerts. I had a conversation today with somebody in Colorado Springs about the whole drive-in live music vibe. I think that's a positive move forward for musicians to get back on stage. But COVID has impacted the live music industry and the clubs, not necessarily the restaurants. I'm talking about live music nightclubs dramatically. It's been devastating.
If you guys are allowed to reopen around September, October, would you guys be prepared?
Absolutely, we'd be prepared. We have plenty of time to get prepared. Just follow the rules. Keep people safe. Come up with some creative ideas to continue the concept of live music. Absolutely would be right. To get people to come downtown and support Live at Jack's. And I must say that our fan base and our customers and our friends and our loyalists, if you will, they came out. They came out and there wasn't even any live music. That's how much that venue is loved in the community. It's really dollars and cents. There was no possible way for Live at Jack's to support the revenue required to keep it open without any customers. I worry about the musicians. I'm not worried about myself. I'm not worried about my business so much as I'm worried about the musicians. I worry about their platform. They're built to perform. That's what they're built to do. COVID took everything away. You know, you had to stay at home. You can't perform. You couldn't go out. You couldn't, I can't hold my grandbaby. I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's been very difficult.
Obviously, economic part of it, but also the emotional and the mental, should I say, distress it's caused. And this being my livelihood for 53 years I've been doing since I started performing, and then the last 20 full time. The ups and downs, and seeing some of my peers, some of the venues failing or closing, and then talking to some artists, various artists, it's almost like we're bewildered. There's an angry part of it that I've experienced, still asking questions. How can this happen? No one obviously expected it to have the impact that it did. How do I keep myself going without an audience? For the most part, I have been doing some Zoom, little smaller Zoom performances. You know, not having that energy, that live energy, it's very distressing. Even now, with emotionally what a lot of us going through, there's still the uncertainty when things start opening up, what that's going to look like, what are going to be the restrictions. A lot of my band members, we talk about, okay, are we going to have to, once we get back, have masks on, singing with masks, and that. So it's still a lot of unanswered questions that, it has most of us in a fog. And economically, it's just been pretty much devastating. Me personally, because of my age, I got a couple of pensions already in place. So that kept the rent going, but anything else outside of that, until all that started coming in, was a little hairy. I'm good through the end of the year so far. After that, first year, then I'm not sure. When I read in the Urban Spectrum that with like Gerald Albright, that a lot of people are starting to go in the studio and do recording and stuff. So there's some good stuff I think on an interpersonal thing that's coming out of this for many of us. That's finally coming out. Me understanding myself more in this situation, and I'm also looking at getting back in the studio as well. But so those are some things. You know, a lot of us now are looking at you know, to kind of bide our time, and now that we have the time, not performing, we really actually have the time now to write and actually get back in the studios and so forth.
Catherine, you've been doing the Winter Park Jazz Festival now for well over 25 years. And this is the first time that you guys have had to kind of pull back from your schedule. Talk to us about that.
Oh, it's been sad. We had worked, you know, every year we try to start earlier. So we pretty much started to look at 2020, you know, last year when we closed down 2019. So, and we sent out surveys. We had worked real hard on the lineup, really trying to serve our audience well, because, you know, every year I feel like, you know, I just want to do better every year. And we really felt like we were there this year. And so we held that as long as we could. But again, it's that emotional, stressful thing. And people who had already purchased tickets and had their lodging, we really didn't want to leave them on the hook. Like, it was really important to us there's so much stress with COVID that we didn't want our jazz festival to add like the unknown, more unknown. I think that's what we've experienced with people, is that every single day you turn around and there's something else that you just don't know, and you think you're going to get to have an event or you're not, or you think you can go out to the grocery store and you can't. And so having to cancel this year because that's just never happened before. So this would have been the 38th year. Hopefully, yeah. So it's of the festival. So you know, it's our connection to Denver in a big way. So our ski resort is at Denver Park, owned by the city of Denver. And so we always feel like after 25 years, I do feel like I'm going to not get to have my family reunion this summer. Like that's, it's the first concert I ever put on, me personally. So on a personal note, it's breaking my heart that I don't get to. I was up on the stage yesterday because we were moving equipment around, and it kind of started to hit me that I don't get to see B come backstage and hang out with me, and just be able to make that many people happy. So I think as a producer, that's the best part of it. The best part is just having so many people come and knowing that what we do brings some joy and happiness to people. And then of course for the community, I mean, it's a big deal economically to lose all the music this summer. It's funny because in ski towns and mountain towns, people think that it's a new thing to do summer, but in Winter Park, we started to do summer 40 years ago with music. So we've built a summer business on it. So it's gonna hurt a lot not to have the events. The businesses really depend on these weekends to pull them through the summer. The events are a very big part of especially our summer economy. So we are doing what we can to, market, and we just can't do any events because we're still at 10 people. Well, so there'll be some assistance for the city, and then there is assistance for 501c3s for charitable organizations. Like they were able to receive the payment protection loans and the other funding that came through the CARES Act, but they left out some nonprofits, and we are a 501c6 organization. So we're a nonprofit, but we're not a charitable nonprofit. So no matter how many times we asked for a fix, it didn't happen. So we weren't able to get funding for the chamber, but the our government's being kind to us, our local government. And we've had to turn around and do, help our business owners get through this. So we had to pivot as an organization and learn all the ins and outs of how to get those loans and how to help all of them get through this before we opened again. But we are sorely going to miss. I did watch, just per chance the other night, we watched the Woodstock documentary, and it got to be the Friday night during that movie. And Richie Havens plays for, I think it was 3.5 hours because they couldn't get anybody else in. And it got done with that part, and I started to cry. And my husband was like, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "I'm not going to get to do this one time this summer. I'm not going to get to make one person happy like we usually do when we bring music." So it's really pretty heartbreaking not to do it. But I think COVID for our community, like all communities, it's just been so hard to deal with. But yeah, but we're going to miss everybody. But we look forward. We're hoping that we are able to change this situation and be able to do music again. Music is just good for our souls, and when we don't have it, it's heartbreaking to know that all summer we're not going to get to have live music.
I mean, it's affected me big time. My last performance with like a live audience was actually March 9th, and it was at the Pepsi Center for a Nuggets game. I sang the national anthem, and it was crazy because I was joking with the security guards. They were like, "Oh, the NBA might be moving to like an audience-less like games," you know what I mean, where like all the stadiums would be empty, but there was never any talks of them shutting it down. And so they were like, "Yeah, it's gonna be so annoying because we'll still have to be here even though there won't be any audience members, but whatever." So we joked about that. And then 2 days later, the NBA shut down, and I was like, okay, this is serious. I feel like that's when it really seeped in. I had been really busy. I had been touring nonstop. I did Europe, then I did like North Carolina, DC, Atlanta. Like there were just all these shows that I'd had, and all of that came to a ridiculous halt. And it was mind-boggling. I mean, it was just something that I could have never imagined or predicted. And I think it was just a lot closer than I thought. I mean, my gig before the Nuggets game was in DC, and I remember talking to everybody, and they were all like, "Okay, Such, you can't be hugging everybody," because I love to hug. I'm a big hugger. They were like, "Do a fist bump, about this coronavirus." And I was like, okay. And then, of course, like after my show, once I saw people, I was a mess out of them. But it was one of those things where it still felt very far away in my mind. And literally just a few days later, stuff started shutting down.
And so how are you dealing with that emotionally?
Overall, I mean, I feel like I'm dealing with it like how everybody else is. I feel like we have our good days. I have my good days. I have my bad days. I have my days where I've accepted it and I'm like, okay, there's going to be a new normal, and I have to wrap my mind around the fact that it's going to be a while before I perform in front of a live audience, which is really crushing for me because when I tell you, I love performing in front of a live audience. I love the synergy, the connection. There's just something really magical about it. And, so sometimes I'm like, okay, that's fine. You find ways to adapt. I've been doing a lot of virtual concerts and Zoom, concerts and all that kind of stuff. But then other times I feel like I'm going through the stages of grief, like with denial, bargaining, anger, sadness, and then acceptance, and then all over again, right? So, because I think we're all mourning life as we do it, because and I don't think it's going to go back to the way it was. I think there's just going to be a newness that exists.
It's obviously put a standstill on everything. I mean, one of the worst industries to be in, right, is our industry. You talk about the music, we also talk about restaurants, right, and the whole structure of the financial assistance did not line up with what we do at all. Because we literally had to lay everybody off, and there's no need for anybody unless we know we can bring them back and we know we can open. We didn't lay off everybody, but we had to. It just didn't fit for us. So they made some changes recently that may help some, but it's been, we didn't know what to do. So, and I'll let RHETT, when he talk about the details more. But literally, we started postponing shows. Then we had to cancel shows, as you know, Catherine. And then we had to cancel shows, and then you start refunding money. Now you don't know when you're going to book the show again. And then we don't know, like Ron said, what are the parameters going to be, right? And I'm, honestly, it's a soiled dove. I mean, fortunately, we have some strength in numbers and have been around a long time. So I'm going to try and endure it as long as we can. And we've been a long time since we started the soiled dove, and we want to be around, and we hope that that's going to happen. But it's going to be hard. I mean, it's hard now, and it's going to be hard. Unfortunately, RHETT, who's as you guys B is one of the reasons the soiled dove is what it is. That and support of all you guys. But I'll tell you, RHETT's cooking in the kitchen and cleaning, doing inventory and everything. So he called an audible to do his to help us out. So we were able to keep him on. But he's doing a lot of jobs that he hadn't done before. So I want to thank him for that, so that I can make sure that he can get the motor started again when we get going. But there's just too many unknowns. And again, RHETT can talk about the agents and things like that as far as what is going to happen. Okay, we're going to come in. Are people going to play for less? I know that doesn't sound good, Ron, right? But are people going to sit and play for less, and then we have 100 people instead of 300? I have no idea. But I'm trying to find silver linings, and Ron hit it. I said 3 things are going to be for sure, right? There's going to be some great music come out, because all these people are going to be buried in their studio or their homes. There are going to be a lot of divorces, but maybe that's not in the silver lining. There are going to be a lot of new babies.
RHETT, do you have anything you want to chime in with?
The thing that I've seen, I'll start with a silver lining, and it's with, a lot of times it's agents versus talent buyers and all this. And as soon as this happened, everyone just got together. We're dealing with a worldwide pandemic, and every agent that I work with has been super understanding about rescheduling and not holding us to deposits and all of that. The thing that frustrates me, though, is that we still don't know when or how we can reopen. And that's the scary part for me, because I've already rescheduled shows that I've had to reschedule again. And, as we go along, we try to say, okay, well, we think we're going to be able to do shows by this time, but we don't know if we will. So right now, a lot of the shows, luckily we have been able to reschedule most of the shows that have been affected, but they're still being affected. So we're booking into, right now I would normally be booking the end of the year, and I'm booking next summer with these shows that are getting postponed. But I would say that, to Ron's point, I think we'll have a lot of album release parties next year.
Thank you for to do this with us tonight, and we just want to be encouraging to you to just hang in there, all right? Because we can't wait to get back to you.
Well, thank you for caring. Thank you, Alfonso. Thank you, B.
From Brazil to Iran, thousands have gathered to show solidarity with U.S. protests over the killing of George Floyd. He died after a Minneapolis cop kneeled on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. The worldwide events echoed peaceful messages in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. In South America, hundreds of protesters came together outside Rio de Janeiro's state government building on Sunday. They demanded an end to police brutality against Black people within Rio's working-class neighborhoods, known as favelas. Iranians held a small demonstration on Saturday outside the Swiss embassy. 2 Syrian artists painted a mural in memory of Floyd in war-torn Idlib. And in Palestine, a group gathered to protest the killing of Iyad al-Halik, an autistic Palestinian man, as well as Floyd. In London, demonstrators marched through the city and around the U.S. Embassy on Sunday, defying the UK's coronavirus restrictions that prohibit mass gatherings. Protesters kneeled in unison, chanting "No justice, no peace" in Trafalgar Square. The protests were peaceful until police attempted to clear Parliament Square. Protests against police brutality also formed throughout Berlin on Saturday. Demonstrators gathered around the U.S. Embassy chanting, "Lives matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter!" In Italy, Black Lives Matter protesters surrounded the U.S. consulate. The country is still on lockdown, and they appear to be social distancing. In Ireland, over 150 protesters gathered on Sunday with signs reading, "The world is watching." They gathered again the next day outside of the U.S. Embassy.
We're here about the injustice of Black lives being lost every day at the hands of the police authority in the United States, and not only in the United States. Racism is a global issue.
Protesters also called for an end to racism in Canada, where a recent police killing of a Black man and another death currently under investigation have inflamed tensions. These protests merged with calls for solidarity with U.S. demonstrators rallying against Floyd's death. In New Zealand, around 4,000 protesters took to the streets of Auckland on Monday for rallies and vigils. Crowds gathered outside the U.S. consulate. Protests demanding justice and an end to racist policing are expected to continue this week.
As an African-American man particularly, I have always felt as if we were besieged by law enforcement, oftentimes feeling as though we have a target on our backs and being hunted, not unlike big game on the savannah. We continue to bear witness to the devastating impacts of ravages of a global pandemic on one hand, and the continued brutalization of our people all across this nation on the other hand. We're here with an august group of women to discuss the issues of COVID-19 and its impact upon their profession in the media. So we're so fortunate today to have Ms. Susan Green. We also have Ms. Tamara Banks. We also have Tina Cartagena. We also have Laura Frank. And finally, we have our beloved publisher of the Denver Urban Spectrum, Ms. B. Harris. So that is our panel today. And so ladies, I'll just throw it out to you with the first question. How is COVID-19 impacting media?
I've just recently, over the past 8 months, moved to Atlanta, and right as I was getting settled with getting to know contacts and folks to do stories on COVID-19 kicked in and things were shut down. But that didn't mean news coverage slowed down. In fact, it picked up quite a bit. When I first started doing stories down here, it was interviewing doctors and other folks were masked up or 6 feet away. That only lasted about 2 weeks, if that. Very quickly, we got told we couldn't interview people in person. one story, for example, Albany, Georgia is about 4 hours south of Atlanta. And that city has been hard hit by COVID-19. 70% of the residents of the 75,000 people that live in Albany are African American. 90% of the people who have been sickened or died from COVID-19 are African American. So there is no one in that small town, mid-sized community that doesn't know someone who has been impacted of this pandemic. So I was all raring to go. Let's go down there and tell the story, get shots of an empty streets of downtown and TikTok of clocks that are moving, but nothing else is moving. And news management said, no, absolutely not, in all caps, exclamation point, exclamation point. So we resorted to most of our stories now are via Zoom platform, which in one way is convenient, but the other side of it, for me anyway, as a journalist, I like to be close to my subject, the people that I'm interviewing. So I feel like we've lost something by getting close to people. We're starting to get back to interviewing people in person with social distancing in mind, but even that was 6 feet away and a mask. And I think it takes away the personal touch, if you will, of being a journalist and being close to someone and gaining their trust. But the trade-off is getting sick or worse, perhaps dying of this deadly disease. So that's one example for me in how this pandemic has impacted me personally covering the news.
I want to echo what Tamara just said. It really affects the quality of our interviews and our ability to really connect with sources. If we can't just be there with them in person, and even if we are just there with them in person, a mask, which really masks facial expressions and sort of nonverbal communication, is really difficult. I spent a lot of time the last couple months following the story of Pastor Terrence Hughes, and partly that story, he had a terrible case of COVID and a very unexpected recovery. At one point, doctors were expecting to literally pull the plug. And Rachel Hughes, his wife, who had a case of COVID as well, although not nearly as severe, and was just in the throes of it when they told her that. And she said, her voice was weak, but her intention was strong. They asked about resuscitating him, and she said, I would like for you to try it. I had, conversations with her about 3 times a day, right? And not only are those stories about how, that couple and that family couldn't be together as Pastor Hughes was in such bad shape, but that we can't be with our sources when, as you can imagine, 3 times a day, those interviews are getting very emotional. And in some ways, I feel like I went through it with her, but I went through it with her in this sort of surreal way of being on the phone. In terms of these protests going on right now, which is a massive story in our city for many reasons, I will admit I really struck out the first couple nights covering these protests. And part of it was that I was just being medically careful. I did not want to be in the throes of the march. I just, there were too many people not wearing masks and too much sort of density going on in that crowd for it to feel comfortable for me. And I have to say, it was really hard to have this story right in our backyards about a police force. I've done a lot of work on excessive force in Denver, and to sort of not be able to really talk to people. I literally just made the calculation, like, I have to be, I can't do this anymore. I can't do that kind of coverage. So I did sit with people on the steps of the Capitol for a couple hours. And, we as reporters know that we take risks, but that was a kind of a risk that I've never had to take in my career. And I just think it was necessary.
So COVID absolutely has had an impact on us. And some of it is because we immediately cleared out all of our on-air hosts and wanted to pare down, what that presentation looks like. So we've had to go to more recording, and discovered though that some on-air hosts had studios in their homes, which we didn't know, and could do some shows. So lots of moving around. I did want to point out that because of COVID, because of all of this, we've developed some other kinds of partnerships. For example, Denver Arts and Venues, the 5 Points Jazz Festival, we did that. Tamara was involved with us. And so it's a matter of us shifting what we do because of COVID. And I have to tell you, even within Rocky Mountain Public Media, our organization, we've shifted so many talents around just to be able to deliver those messages about COVID, figure out what those balances are. So where we are the drop, KUVO Jazz and Rocky Mountain PBS, it's just a total scramble of how we're working together. It's completely different, but it's working for us.
Well, one thing I want to say, Alfonso, is not only is the pandemic affecting how journalists work and the work that they do, but it's also affecting the organizations they work for. And whether it's nonprofit news or public media or traditional commercial media have all been hit very hard financially, because the revenue streams, the business models for all of those depend on funding from the public or underwriting from small businesses and large businesses and foundations, and all of those folks have been affected financially by the pandemic. This is all happening at the very same time that the public needs more information from its news sources. So, both of the things that we're talking about today, the pandemic itself and the issues that have been again brought to the surface after the death of George Floyd, both of those things are driving people to seek out reliable information. They need it, and they need it now. So you asked me about CoLab, which is the Colorado News Collaborative. And so a few weeks ago, as you are well aware, we launched with a project called COVID Diaries Colorado. And nearly 24 news organizations, almost 100 journalists across the state on every platform, television, radio, newspaper, digital. And what we were able to do is bring together all of these newsrooms and say, on this day, we're all going to go out and start covering different stories that we'd all agreed on previous to that, what areas we were going to cover. And we were able to give a big picture and a big snapshot for what was really happening in Colorado with COVID. And you could get that big picture. And the truth is, no single news organization in Colorado could have possibly produced that by themselves. That's a story that could not have been done unless we were all working together.
The fact that we're all, different entities. We're large, we're small, we're media, we're radio, we're, everything in the COVID project is wonderful. But, I'm wearing a different hat. I'm a publisher of a small community paper. So it has affected us, of course, advertising financially, which has caused us not to print as many publications as we normally do. We've been around many, many years, but as far as the reporting, our writers, it's a monthly publication. So the distribution, circulation has gone down a little bit, but I think our readership has gone up. Like Tina said, we did some collaborations as well. And I think this webcast, this has been on the burner for really 20 years. We still have a voice, and we have so many connections, and we have so many people that we can reach out to. I mean, the collaboration, I talked with Tina, we can use some of her resources, and I was looking at the website, so there may be some videos we may want to tie in to, you know, to our broadcast. And some of our advertisers, they're supportive of it and they want to do it. So I want to continue with, with this project. And it's something I think is timely for us right now with the COVID.
You know, I think what Bea has just described is an excellent example of innovation, born of necessity, right? But
yes.
But you know, Denver Urban Spectrum will be all the stronger because of what she has learned and done in these last few months. So that will last, and that will be a good thing to last coming out of this. And then as hopefully things do get back to normal someday, and you add in these other things that are going to make it stronger in the future, in some ways, you know, there's, I don't know if you can call it a silver lining because it's such a dark cloud, but if we're looking for a silver lining, then that would be one.
And I'd like to just kind of go back, Laura, to what you said about the delivery of good, solid, fact-based reporting, particularly given the fact that we have a president who plays fast and loose with the truth. And in crises like these, we're hit with a triple crisis right now. And we all simultaneously look in that direction for guidance and leadership. And we find that lacking. And so I think people are turning to us with more intensity and just looking at us saying, okay, well, listen, I need to go somewhere where I can actually trust the information that I'm getting, even though we have the individual saying that we promulgate fake information.
You know, people look at you know, there's been a crisis in media, in journalism, for more than a decade, intensely, longer than that if you really want to start looking at it, but intensely a crisis. You know, the Rocky Mountain News closed 11 years ago, Colorado's oldest newspaper. But people thought, well, that means there's a dearth of information. There's not a dearth. There's lots and lots of information out there. There's a fire hose of information, but it's very hard to know what is trustworthy and what is not. And I think, Alfonso, you are absolutely right. People are searching for that. What can I trust? What can I do? So I think that makes it all the more incumbent upon us in the media to make sure that despite the financial difficulties and the staffing difficulties and the, you know, being called enemies of the people difficulties, that we double down and make sure that what we're delivering is that reliable, trustworthy information that people need. It's never been more important than it is right now. And we're at a pivotal point, not just because of the pandemic and not just because of George Floyd, but those two things have brought to a head what has been simmering for years and decades and even centuries. And I'm hopeful that maybe there is a way. The innovation that we've been talking about within the media is not just with the media, but the innovation can be with the public too, that we get to a place where people do figure out what information they can trust and how they can use that information, because it is power.
I think it's important to underscore what Laura has said here, and it can't be overstated. It's not just journalism. It's not just the folks on this conversation. It is the people, the viewers, the readers, the listeners of this country will suffer if they don't have access to fair and balanced news. The media, journalists are being attacked right now. And what we all know is that democracy cannot thrive, cannot survive without a solid, autonomous, free press. And that's at the very core of the issues that's happening around the country now. When you have the President of the United States, as Laura mentioned, calling us the enemy of the people, the enemy of the state, and then giving essentially the green light and thumbs up to law enforcement to arrest, detain, and even abuse journalists doing their job, bringing the voice of what's happening around the world on the front lines to the people in their living rooms, in their cars, and online. This country becomes more and more in jeopardy. So while I am empathetic, obviously, for journalists to keep their jobs, I'm really concerned about the future of how this nation will survive if journalism continues to disappear and become a bite size rather than a smorgasbord of opinions and views and perspectives.
What do you think this will change?
That's the million-dollar question, Alfonso, because we could have had this conversation 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We can list the names of people who have been killed in equally horrible ways, and some of them with video, as there was with George Floyd. And it's hard to think about, what if nothing changes. So I think we all hope that something changes, and maybe one thing that is on the table is this issue of qualified immunity. And that is, public employees, including police officers, in many cases, in many states, have qualified immunity, meaning they can't be prosecuted for things that they do while on duty. And I think it remains to be seen whether that will be used as a defense in the Floyd murder case. But it's certainly something that has been on the table and is getting some attention. And I believe there's a bill right now in the Colorado legislature. Probably Susan can tell us more than I know about it, but I believe there's a bill to address some of that. And I don't know the details of it, but there are some very hard, fast things that are systemic that haven't been addressed in years and years. So if not now, when?
Well, I think Laura raises some very good points about how policies and systemic change is in the works. I would also add that we need to understand the why. Why are Black folks and people of color treated less than human? Let's remember that in 1600, African human beings were brought to this continent and other places around the world, but we're speaking about what is now known as the United States of America, were brought here to serve as slaves, and they were treated as animals. I beg to ask the question, has that ever changed? Even with some white liberals, I ask, are you saying that Black people are equal, or are you saying that Black people shouldn't be treated that way, but let's not, really put them in decision-making positions? And so I think sometimes the liberal white population needs to come to terms with really what equity is versus equality. And then also, like I said, remember how we got here. And so when you think about, too, the other piece of education that a lot of us either forget or just don't know is that a lot of police departments were recruiting people from the KKK. Stapleton is a perfect example where a mayor of Denver appointed the police chief and others in prominent leadership positions of the city who were also KKK members. So you have to ask, has that mentality ever changed? And until you can see individuals, no matter what the color of their skin is, as a human being versus, they shouldn't be treated poorly, but they're not exactly my equal, nothing will really change. And I think that is what's happening too. And the third piece of it is, I think of racism as like a really bad infection. And the only way we can clean or mitigate an infection is to expose it and scrub it out and take out all the germs. And while that sounds great, what the final product will look like will be awesome. But in the meantime, it's painful, it hurts, and there's a lot of tears. But that's the only way to clean out the infection. And in this case, that infection is racism.
Well, in Denver, we've had cases very much like George Floyd's. We had the killing of Michael Marshall and the killing of Marvin Booker, both in the Denver jail. Both of those cases resulted in very few, if any, and basically no repercussions for the officers involved. The same kind of choking, the same kind of kneeling on the neck. The same tactics were used. And we really had to actually fight. The Colorado Independent had to literally sue the city to get videotape of what had happened to Michael Marshall, because even his family hadn't seen it. And again, both those cases resulted in no repercussions yet. The Booker case went to a civil trial in federal court, and the jury awarded his family $6.5 million and found, for example, and I sat there and watched Denver police lie about the facts of that case. The taser used to kill Marvin Booker went, quote unquote, missing, and has really never been investigated by the Hancock administration. And so, I mean, what we've seen is, promises after promises to change things, to hire a new police chief or hire a new sheriff or put in a new use of force policy. But we really haven't seen those bear fruit. In fact, I can't really recall how many times I've seen those announcements about reform and how much money they've spent on studies that haven't really paid out. So, I think if anything good comes out of it, people will be paying a lot closer attention. And, it's ironic because, yes, I was handcuffed while videotaping police's handling of a black man who was naked and handcuffed and not covered up by police on Colfax Avenue. I think what we'll see come out of this is, people really understanding the need to videotape these incidents and the need for police to not grab our cameras, for example. And that's one of the things that's in the bill at the legislature. And really make sure that the administration is not stonewalling or just blowing off key aspects of these cases, like, for example, the taser that is still missing in the Marvin Booker case 11 years later.
And all I can feel is that I try to hang on to that hope that it's going to be different. Yes. So many more conversations happening right now, but I still think it's just not going to happen overnight. I feel like even someone like myself have been raised we can be prejudiced ourselves. So this isn't just a problem for some groups of people. This is a problem for all of us.
I just saw a post, I think it was Theo Wilson, and he said it took a whole nation or a country or something to get those 4 guys arrested. He said, but it doesn't get, they shut down, something about the whole country shutting down to get them arrested. Then he made the comment, he said, if they don't get convicted, this is just all a rehearsal. Even my son had said one day, he said, oh, we protest all the time, nothing's gonna change, nothing's gonna change. But you know what? I feel like this is a game changer. I really do. I like what you said, Tamara, when you said that this is an infection, and it is an infection, and it's an infection just like COVID, but it shows which one is more serious right now. The racism is more serious because people came out. It's all these underlying things too, because the man in the White House, the unemployment, everything that's going on. People are not working, so they can come out and they can protest. Forget about COVID. They're covered up. I don't think, and I'm praying that there won't be a big spike, because I think that this racism was the most important, and it was a time for it to show it. I just feel, that this is the game changer.
Within a year, we'll have a vaccine and a cure for COVID-19. We will not have a cure for racism in that same time frame. And to me, I think the latter is the one that kills more people.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, I tell you, I want to thank you guys for participating in this conversation today. We want to thank Susan Green, Tamara Banks, Tina Cartagena, Laura Frank, and obviously Ms. B. Harris for participating in this discussion this afternoon. I think it's gone a long way in helping us to understand at a deeper level what steps we need to take as we move forward. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
It's been 10 days since George Floyd was brutally murdered.
How many times do we need to ask you to listen to your players?
What will it take
for one of us to be murdered by police brutality?
What if I was George Floyd?
If I was George Floyd?
What if I was George Floyd?
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 I am George Floyd.
I am Breonna Taylor.
I am Ahmaud Arbery.
I am Eric Garner. I am Laquan McDonald.
I am Tamir Rice. I am Trayvon Martin.
I am Walter Scott.
I am Michael Brown Jr.
I am Samuel Du Bois.
I am Frank Smart.
I'm Philip White. I am Jordan Baker.
We will not be silenced.
We assert our right to peacefully protest. It shouldn't take this long to admit. So, on behalf of the National Football League,
this is what we, the players, would like to hear you state. We,
the National Football League, condemn racism and the systematic oppression of black people.
We, the National Football League,
admit wrong and silencing our players from peacefully protesting.
We, the National Football League, believe Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Such. It's a pleasure to have you here for our Urban Splendor segment of Urban Spectrum Now. You're such a talented work of art. And, you know, I've been watching you over the years. We were honored to have you featured on one of our covers, you know, a few years ago. And been watching your career. So we wanted to feature you. You know, I know you were part of the Black Music Month segment, and we said that our audience would see you. So now they can see you and also hear you. And we will be showcasing one of your videos, Melanin. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about that song, how it came about, and how it can relate to what's going on in the world right now, especially with the murder of George Floyd.
Absolutely. So Melanin is a track off of my album, Wide Nose Full Lips. It's a song that I do with my dear, dear friend, performance poet, Carrie Joy. And this song was birthed out of us really just wanting to have a song that was for the people, for Black people, for us to remember the skin that we're in, for us to remember the strength that we have. And in times that even when we feel weak, to stand on the backs of our ancestors, because they've all gone through so much worse, and they came out just thriving. I think that especially in a time like this, where we're reminded how much Black life does not matter. You know, judged by everything, I feel like this song is especially poignant because if anything, if there's one message that this song, you know, definitely draws home, is that Black life is rich, it's beautiful, we are smart, we are kind, we are strong, and we are resilient. And that there's power in that, and that our lives do matter more than ever.
Yes, I totally agree. I love that song and so many others that you have produced over the years. And so before we tune in to Melanin, the video, I would like for you to give the audience an opportunity of how they can follow you. IamSuch.com.
That's right, you got it.
I do have that one, but
that's right, you know that one. Yes.
I know that one, but you know, and let them know what you're doing, you know, so that they can follow you.
Absolutely. So my website, as being mentioned, is IamSuch.com. You can follow me on Instagram at IamSuch, on Twitter at Such, and on Facebook you can just search for me, I Am Such, and you'll find me. And here's the thing, I am super, super vocal. I definitely love to interact with you guys. So if you message me, you post, you comment or anything, I will definitely reply. You know, right now you can, you know, get any of my things on my website. You can find my music on any of the platforms from Apple Music to Spotify to Pandora. I'm there, and I feel like we're all in this together. And my goal, as always, is
and we'll all get out of it together.
Exactly, that's right. And I feel like, you know, my goal is to use my platforms for good. It's just to use all of this for good. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us, and everybody who's watching this, stay tuned for Melanin.
Someone to save our lives. Someone to save us. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Ooh.
Planted deep within this fertile brown skin lies the capacity to be magnificent. We stand on the backs of giants. The oceans formed after millennials of sun-kissed rivers have poured in. And like the oceans, our vastness has not yet fully been explored. We know more of the glass ceiling above us than we do of the power within us, that black power. We are electric, shocking civilization into existence charged with greatness, but how soon we forget that his story doesn't tell our story. The Underground Railroad isn't our only claim to glory. We didn't have sit-ins and marches when we built the pyramids. The struggle is real, but so are our successes. Do the math yourself because the figures have been hidden. All we needed was a reflection, but instead, we've been looking for
someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save us. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Ooh.
So the next march on Washington should be a march of melanin, flowing throughout the streets like the blood throughout the skin where they can't breathe. We don't carry the oxygen. Cells of change say their names to ensure they haven't died in vain. Till we shall overcome becomes we have overcame. We shall lift every voice and sing as every fist is raised. Take every knee as we make the stand to say that we the people won't simply go away. We were stolen from Africa, brought to America with royalty in our back pockets. That's why they consistently charge us paying for this country's vices as the cops become the robbers of our liquid gold. Spilled across the nation, soaked into a foundation that they've tried to wash away. But like liquid gold, we always rise. All we need to do is rise, and we don't need
someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Oh. Someone to save our lives. Someone to save us. Someone to save our lives. Our lives. Ooh.
The Sawaya Law Firm specializes in things that have to do with people getting hurt. One of our core values here is responsibility. You give me a job, I'll take care of it for you, and we're in it for the long term. People don't come in here with contracts. They come in here with lives that have to be rebuilt. You need somebody that's going to sit close to you and understand you. If you've got something that's a serious problem dealing with an accident, I'm here to be spoken to. I'm here to help you.